Hello and welcome to another episode of Younger by the Minute. I'm one of your hosts, Jamie Speiser, and I'm always here with my other lovely host,
Jennifer Speiser.
And welcome to the show. And this show helps you live younger, stronger, and more intentional with every choice that you make. And today's episode is going to hit home for a lot of people, especially people that I've coached, because they've heard me say this time and time again. But we're going to talk about how to end the cycle of yo-yo dieting once and for all, and how to build what I call a bulletproof wellness plan.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, when we were thinking about what we wanted to talk about today, people don't realize how fast the holidays are coming. And I think that's one of the biggest things that can derail people, because what we do, how we eat, the way that we eat, the foods that we eat, it's very emotional. And then going into the holidays, there's like this nostalgia, like you get to have foods that you haven't had and all that stuff. So we really wanted to talk about this before that happens so people can stay on track better. But do you feel that you can honestly, I know you've had success and it's with a mindset shift. And I also know GLP-1s have helped with food noise. But how possible is it for you to feel like that people can actually overcome yo-yo dieting if they don't do the work internally?
Well, it all starts with emotion,
Okay.
because the truth is most people don't struggle with how to get healthy because there's such an abundant amount of information on the internet. They struggle with staying healthy, and that comes with the mindset shift. That's why you see keto, paleo, plant-based fasting all cycle through. You'll see keto is hot for a while and then it kind of dissipates out and gets replaced with intermittent fasting, or the individual starts keto and then they end up going into intermittent fasting because they're just jumping from plan to plan because one is not working as fast as they thought it would, so they just kind of jump. But the emotional attachment is because that they got started, I should say, is because they had something emotional to get them going.
Mm-hmm.
Something like they're getting prepared for a wedding, they're getting prepared for a vacation. They've finally hit a low enough point to where they're just sick and tired of being the way that they are, feeling the way they are, looking the way they are. That's the emotional part to it. But then when life continues to happen over and over, that's where they lose the steam because they didn't change their mindset and how they look at food and why they're eating the food that they're eating.
Yeah, and I can break down it's even from my personal perspective, like you get bored from what you're eating. And that's where I kind of I have noticed lately, like you and I, we kind of rotate all the different stuff. Like we'll fast if we feel like we need to fast. If it's calling for us to not have carbohydrates one day, we'll do more ketogenic. Or, if we've been eating, we can do more carnivore, we can do everything. And I do believe that balance is key. I had a conversation with somebody who's been carnivore for a while, and he now has issues with his bile being able, like his gallbladder being able to digest all the fats. So I do think like anything in excess can be a bad thing. And I think that's where maybe it is the abundance of information, or it's also not having your family members on board. There's so many things that can derail somebody. So I like that we're going into this bulletproof way.
Right. And you brought up a really important part, because just like when I prep people for shows or in that, I always ask, where's your spouse at or significant partner at in this journey? Because that will derail it, because it's just like a smoker who's trying to quit smoking. If you come home and this person is just smoking, it's going to break you. What's going to end up happening with that.
Or we start dating and I bring you home carrot cake every night.
Yeah, from Ruth Chris, right? Exactly. It just kind of wrecked everything. But, the biggest thing is like I said, people have the motivation to kind of get going. It's what's going to keep them going is the biggest thing. And that has to deal with is you got to change your outlook and you got to start looking at what your triggers are. And I would say the answer with you and what you had said about how we incorporate, or at least I will change us based on what's going on. Like, we had our 11-year anniversary party coming up, and I know you wanted to wear a particular dress, but I also knew that it was a very high stress week. So I kept the caloric intake up. So by bringing calories down would add more stress to your body. So I continued to fed you up, but I brought your carbs down because I know that you were already going to be dumping enough insulin from stress, from adrenals. So I limited that down by balancing it out with more fats and protein, and brought the carbs down temporarily. Now that we're through the party, we're bringing it back up. But that's the thing is it's taken a long time to do that. And with the help of a GLP, and more importantly, the help with a CGM, help us kind of really unlock that stuff. But you got to remember is we eat to perform. We eat for our health because we teach it and preach it, and it is what our company is all about. And we're a walking example of what we want other people to be, and so we promote ourselves through it. But also, we know what it's like to be on the other side.
Yeah.
You know, you see panels, blood panels all the time of what it looks like when people are not healthy. I get them when they are unhealthy and their body fat is excessively high or they're almost pre-diabetic and stuff like that. So we see the outcome of making poor decisions on a daily basis. So that is a real big emotional why, because we know the opposite of what we're not doing.
Yeah, no, it's actually funny that you bring that up because I was thinking about it when I was walking Kiki this morning. And I remember being a child and not being as motivated. Like I didn't feel good. And my mom has even brought it up. She's like, you see, you're so much more motivated. And now, granted, some of that might be a teenager, but it's also because I wasn't eating well. I wasn't
Right.
eating well for my body. Hormonally, I was off. I was even talking about it before we left to come record this. Like my staples were hot dogs and chicken nuggets and all these things that I know just really derailed me. And now that I do feel good, I can perform. But I will say I'm very blessed that you cook our food and then we have somebody that prepares our meals, because you have to be realistic with what you can do with the amount of time and budget that you have. And I can tell you, if we're not prepared, we're not as good as if we are prepared. And I think
Mhm.
that's another thing. Like you have to dedicate time and you have to prepare for it.
Yeah. And then, you know, and you're 100% right. Being prepared is critical. I mean, think of any point in your life where you're not prepared. What does that part of your life look like? But, you know, the big side too is even being prepared. If you don't have that mindset shift, then when you go on vacation or an unexpected thing pops up or something like that, it completely derails you. And that how long do you stay derailed is the thing. Because for a lot of people, that is enough motivation for them to stop.
Mhm.
Because it's like, oh, I've been off for 2 days. You know, what's the point? And then the emotion kicks in, and then they're back to making the same excuses they were beforehand. To where if you have a strong enough why and you change your mindset on why you were doing it, that is the motivation to get you back on plan quicker. You know, it could be 24 hours, it could be 48 hours, but it's going to be a lot faster and keeps you going on it. A good example of that is just saying, you know, I want to look and feel better. And it's like, of course, we all want to look and feel better. But what if you said, I want to look and feel better because my body composition is killing my confidence at work. It's killing my confidence with my partner in the bedroom. It's killing my confidence because I can see my kids picking up the same poor habits that I have. It's killing my confidence in the fact because my doctor told me I'm pretty much pre-diabetic.
Yeah.
And now I'm down the pathway of what my parents are, and I don't want to go down that pathway. So that has a lot more pain behind it than just saying I want to look and feel better. So if you go into it, that's to our listeners, you're going to go into your why, then you really need to go deep into your why. You can't just go surface level on your why. You got to go down to the, you know, I've said it many times before. If your why doesn't make you cry, then you haven't hit your why.
No, and I think that's the biggest thing. Also feel like people just are surface level, like it. Even with us, like we'll be prepared and I won't eat, or I'll get behind and then all of a sudden I'm not able to think because I now know what it likes to truly be fueled up. And so I'll feel my blood sugar drop or I'll feel something and then I'm not able to perform, and then it does affect everything.
Mhm.
And so I think that people, once you start to feel good, it's actually almost frustrating because now when we do derail, you feel it, you know,
Mhm.
and it's like it actually helps me not want to stay derailed because now I feel so poor.
Right.
And so I think that getting in touch with yourself, with your blind spots, with your triggers, and then what is truly driving you and what is the outcome that you want is huge. Truth be told, when I first started working with you, it was vanity. And
Mhm.
then it had to get deeper than that. And it's
Correct.
like you have to peel back the layers of the onion to figure out what is really driving you, because fat is also, or adipose tissue is also a protective mechanism. Like people sometimes that gain weight have been, you know, had some really horrible things happen to them. So they do that so they're not attractive. And sometimes people will, it's very much emotional what we put in our mouth and how we eat and how we live. It's all based on what's going on deeper.
Right. And unfortunately, we're all like this at some point. Some people will break the code or
Mhm.
crack the code, whatever you want to say, however you want to put it. But for a lot of people, the pain of staying the same is far less than the pain of changing and maybe not getting to where they want to be at. So that's why they stay exactly where they're at, because they're in a comfortable spot where they know this is it, versus going through the process of having to make the changes, sacrificing the time in the gym, doing all the things they're doing, eating clean, doing that stuff, getting more vanilla with their plan, and then realizing that it's not moving as fast as they want. And
Of
again,
course.
remember the whole journey, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Hmm.
But people are always trying to sprint to the next level, and when they don't get there, then they kind of throw their hands up in the air and go, "Yep, I knew it wouldn't work." But that
Yeah.
goes back to what I originally said with why they're jumping from different fad diets over and over and over, because they're not giving that plan enough time. A good example is, there's different forms of keto. There's cyclical keto, which is usually you'll ketogenic diet Monday through Saturday, and then you'll carb load on Sunday. And then you will kind of feel kind of sick Monday and Tuesday, and you just kind of repeat this process. So it's just a cyclical deal. Then you have a carb time keto, which means you just put carbs specifically around your workouts, especially the more in high intensity
Oh,
style
I love that.
workouts,
Yeah.
right? Or if you truly go at it, and not the Atkins style where you're eating cheese and a high saturated fat, but you're eating more of a healthy fat. But in truly to go into full ketosis, you need to be on that no carbs for a minimum of 6 months, because then your body will truly have adapted over to using ketosis as a state. And the majority of people will not go that long on a no carb diet. And
Well,
that's where they fail.
and I think you hit something earlier too in regards to labs. Like, that's why we've added labs and we do things much differently, whether it's like a CGM or a lab panel, whether it be serum labs or other diagnostic testing, like even food sensitivities, or if they have SIBO or SIFO, because a lot of times if something isn't working, there's something bigger going on. And not everybody's meant to be on these plans. And then for women, especially, you have to be very careful once you get too lean. I know that firsthand. My body completely shut down hormonally. You have to be careful. And women, especially, I think to constantly be in a caloric deficit.
Yep.
And I think that's really hard. Yes, you have to be in a
The
deficit.
1,200 calorie female diet.
Or like an over cardio and all that stuff. And it's still hard. Like, you have to remind me even now today, it's like drilled into our heads. But I think, that's where working with somebody that, understand that it is a marathon, not a race. And for whatever reason, it is Murphy's Law. It does take a lot less time to put the weight on than to take the weight off. I don't know why it's that way, but it is that way
Like
for
saving
most
money and
people.
spending money.
Yeah. Or for people that are more ectomorph or leaner, it's harder for them to put muscle on, but easier for them to lose it. It's just the way they are.
Right.
So knowing your body type, knowing your physiology, knowing what might be a hindrance to you or might help you, and then using the tools. Like, we are fans of the GLP-1s as long as they're used the right way.
Yeah.
We're also fans of doing a complete microbiome reset if they have SIBO or SIFO and there's something else that's not working, or if they're postmenopausal to being a cycling female. That's a very different meal plan that they need to be on. And then what's the output? I don't think a lot of people match their nutrition to what they're doing.
No, I just actually had that conversation on the floor today with a new client. She did came over and tried a session with us. She's working with Hannah. She works out at Orange Theory. She's premenopausal. And so we kind of went into it, and I'm like, well, I'm going to assume that, Hannah probably already has you on probably a lower carb or moderate carb diet because you're premenopausal and we're trying to control insulin and everything. And she's like, yeah. And I think, and you're doing Orange Theory, which is more of a high intensity workout. I said, so you're literally right there out training the diet.
Right.
And I said, then the majority of people that we get a hold of are already under eating to get with. So, then you got to take a look at the pathway of energy, because you have ATP, glycogen, and then oxygen. I said, in those style workouts, you're using more oxygen than you are anything else, because they promote the heart rate. That's everybody's overachieving because they want to have a high heart rate because it shows that I'm burning 1,000 calories. But the reality is you're really not burning 1,000 calories of fat, glycogen out of the bloodstream, because you're more in an oxidative state than you're in a glucose state. And where you want to burn fat, you want to be more in that ATP and glucose state. So again, like you said, here we have a premenopausal female that's going to struggle with losing weight because of the fact of her hormones and insulin. She's out training the diet because she's doing the wrong type of training with it for where she's at. Doesn't mean once we get her hormones locked in and everything, we can't go to that. But for right now, it's that. But she's completely in her mind and struggling and ready to quit because she can't focus on the fact of, like, this is, like I was telling her, like, you got to give yourself some compassion right now, because you went through, I think it was a surgery, And now you're dealing with hormones and we're restoring gut health. Like you got to give yourself some compassion and let your body go through what it needs to go through right now. And it will fix itself. But if you're just solely beating yourself up and the mindset is wrong and only focused on the scale, that's where people quit and just go, you know what? It's a lot easier to remain the same, eat like a trash panda, which is going to end up inevitably cause more harm than good down the road. But it's a more comfortable state for them.
Well, also, I feel like they just get frustrated. And then because they've been in such a caloric deficit, the body's hungry.
Yep.
So you'll eat, like, look at us after a bodybuilding show. I was
Right.
talking about it today with a patient. Like, it just made myself sick. One, you give me trauma anytime you talk about ATP because the Krebs cycle was just something that was horrendous for me to try to learn.
Actually, I liked it.
But to your point, everything is energy. And that's the other thing. I do feel like your mindset, like if you look at food as a reward or a punishment, you need to shift that mindset. If you look at working out as a punishment, you have to shift that mindset. If you feel like you can never get there, all of that's just going to make it, your thoughts are changing the physiology in your body. And if you don't think that you deserve it, you can do it, or it's going to happen, it won't.
Yeah, you're 100% right with that. It all starts with the fact that you just break that down. Like you should be grateful that you have the capability to work out, that you have the arms and limbs to work out.
Right.
You have the financial means to be able to afford a membership to a gym, or if you have to afford the home equipment at it, that you have the time and the ability to go, the car to get there. I mean, those are all gratitude. That's a gratitude that you owe. But if you're only focusing on, well, this is going to take up my time, this is going to cost me this, that, you're just in a completely negative mindset. That's where we go. And before you jump in on that, I think when we talk about a bulletproof wellness plan, we've talked so much about mindset, but here's going to be the top 5 that I think, and then we'll go into them. But clarity is going to be up there. We already talked about mindset, simplicity, consistency, accountability, and then mindset conditioning.
Yeah. What I was going to say is today the mindset conditioning took place because you and I are both a little fatigued, and it was hard getting through the workout. And I was like, okay, I should just be grateful that I can move my body. I should just be grateful that I can move my legs. I should just be grateful that I can breathe. And some days it is harder than others. And then you have those days where you're just a beast and you can do everything. Like yesterday, I did cardio, I plunged, I worked out, like I hit all my targets. Today, it was like, it wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, but at the end of the day, it all adds up. And so it's the sum of all the choices that we make and the thoughts that we think that get us to the place that we want to be. And so to go into that, like, one, clarity. If you don't have a clear vision, then what are you aiming for?
Well, it's not just a clear vision. Like you have to get so clear and precise. I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, great. But when do you want to lose the 10 pounds?
And what kind of pounds?
Like what kind of pound? Yeah. Because for me, like that could be 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat. For me, I shouldn't say for me. For people, they don't realize it could be 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds of fat. For me, like I want to lose 8 pounds of fat, and I know it's probably going to cost me a little bit of muscle, but I wanted to be more on the fat loss side than on the muscle loss side. And then, add the time frame, and then getting clear on how are you going to do this? Is it going to be all through diet? Is it going to be through diet and weightlifting? Is it going to be through diet, weightlifting, and cardio? Is it going to be through diet, weightlifting, cardio, and yoga? Like, how does this plan look like? So you got to get real clear on your goals. And we talk about this within our company with our team. You got to get really clear on what you want. Me and you, every year, every quarter, we get very clear on where we want to be at personally and professionally.
And don't you think it's interesting? Like we talked about this on Sunday because we've been getting closer and closer to our faith. Like I always felt like we were pretty faith-based, but now it's like, okay, now we've hit the benchmark of being clear physically. Now we've done a lot mentally. And now it's like, now God's even pushing us to be more clear of like being aligned with God.
Spiritually.
And so it's really like, you're never done. I don't think anyone's ever done. You're never truly there. You have to find another summit. You have to peel back another layer. And so making sure that you stay, like I have noticed that I need to look at my vision board or write out my tasks every single day. Because if I don't do it every single day and have my whys or my clarity right in front of me, I do lose sight of them a little bit.
Right. And then, I think the big thing too is people make things way too complicated. You know,
Well, no.
they want to accomplish so much, and well, you're an overthinker, so that's why it gets overcomplicated. But you know, they want to overhaul everything in one big
Mhm.
shot. You know, and I guess for me, you know, and I'll put this into weightlifting. It's like, you know, if your goal is to put, you know, squat 225 for 10 reps, well, you're not going to just walk up to the bar one that your first time and squat 225 for 10 reps. Like you're going to have to start out with maybe 50 pounds for a week or two, and then you're going to have to progressively work into that weight. And it's the same thing with any part of your life. We try to do too much at once, and then we get mad and upset because we're not getting things done or forgetting things, or we just have to admit this is way too complicated. Well, yeah, because you made it too complicated. You
Mhm.
know, maybe you just start out with the big things, honing in on maximizing your sleep, hitting your protein intake goal and your water intake goal. That'd be a great place to start. Now you're just starting with three things. You're not trying to overhaul your entire diet or, you know, really focus on trying to cut out sugar because that's the most addictive thing. And that's going to be the one that your body craves the most, especially during stress. And that's going to be the one that's going to trigger you to fall off playing because you're going to give in to it, that addiction to the sugar that we've had for years. So maybe that's an easy starting point before anything is just water, get your water intake up because majority of the time people are dehydrated versus hungry. So they need to quench their thirst. But then the second one is kick that sugar habit because the sugar is going to lead to inflammation and a bunch of other health issues.
I think that's a big thing because, like, when life gets busy, we tend to not put ourselves first. So, if you can have small, attainable goals and have them in a place where you can visualize them and cross them off or do something, that's a dopamine hit, and
Right.
that's your reward center of your brain. So
Yep.
then you then build on that.
Which is where the GLPs shine really get on that because it shuts off that reward signal. A lot of people are saying that it shuts down hunger. It kind of does a little,
If it's
but
overdosed, it
if it's
definitely, yeah.
overdosed, it does. But you know, the biggest thing, the part where it shines when it's dosed properly, is it shuts off that reward signal, and that
Yeah.
could be the reward signal of sugar, alcohol, gambling,
Porn.
drugs, porn. It's all of it,
Yeah.
but nobody's talking about that side of it, you know. But it's because that's the bit that's that side of it.
Well, no, and microdosing it is really nice because it doesn't shut your hunger off too much and or slow gastric emptying. And it's taken us a few years to figure out the sweet spot for ourselves and for patients because if dosed too high, you then end up with slowed gastric emptying and then you have constipation or you're not hungry and then you are just eating up the muscle. You're not
Right.
eating up the fat.
And what I've said in the past too, a majority of the people that started on them weren't eating enough to begin with. Maybe they're
Yeah.
one or two meal people anyway. And so now that the reward signal shut off, they're down to the one meal because they're just eating one large junk meal because they didn't change their mindset. We're back to mindset on how they need to properly eat because they don't want to eat chicken and rice. They don't want to eat chicken and sweet potatoes. They don't want to eat this stuff. They'd rather eat the junk food and reward themselves because they're doing well on that side of it.
Well, and I understand we have to meet patients where they are at. So, like, to get them, like, if they come in and weight's the biggest issue, you start to build trust. But I also do think that there is a lot of misdosing with it.
Mm.
You actually get hungrier on a GLP-1.
Because my
Yeah, but
insulin
do you crave?
improves.
Are your cravings different?
I just need food.
Yeah.
Like I want food. And to be frank, I can only eat so much junk and I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
Like I don't want like I can probably go a good 3 or 4 weeks now of just straight clean eating before I'm like, you know what, I could have a pizza, but once I have it, a couple of slices, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I don't even want any more. Same thing with alcohol. Like it's
Mhm.
even if I wanted to drink more, I won't drink more because I don't want it.
Yeah.
You know. All right, now we get into consistency, and that's the biggest part. You know, I think something that, again, coming back, taking simple and now adding to consistency, hang a calendar on your wall and just start checking the boxes on the day that you at least hit 80%. Not 100%, but 80%.
Mhm.
Because 80% over an entire year is a big transformation for a lot of people. You know, when you just look at 80% for the day, it doesn't really resonate too big, but that's like if you save $100 a month, you know, it's $100, but $100 at the end of the year, I mean, it's quite a bit more money. So it's just like money, it's compounding.
Yeah.
So as long as you're compounding your results, your consistency of the things that you actionable items that you've put in place, you're winning.
Yeah.
So then we get into accountability. You know, you could start as simple. Again, we talked about your partner, significant other.
Mhm.
Is that someone that can hold you accountable? If they're not, then you need to find a friend or a family member. If not that, maybe someone at the gym. And if it isn't that, then obviously that's where you need to step in and hire someone. And that's like where Hannah really shines and everything else with that is because, and you and Rachel holding people accountable, where I hold people accountable, even our trainers, we hold them accountable. Like one of our things, like when someone comes in and trains, we always ask, what did you eat? And are you hydrated? Two critical things that we need to know before we ever train anybody. Because if they haven't eaten, then and they're dehydrated, then glucose is going to drop, blood pressure is going to drop, and I'm going to get lightheaded and pass out 10 to 15 minutes into the workout, and now it's a wasted session.
It happens in my chair too. And the same thing, like when I'm trying to treat somebody from a medical perspective, whether it's hormones or also aesthetically, you didn't get to where you are overnight. And so you hit the nail on the head with grace, but then also being accountable and also compounding.
Yeah.
Everything does add up, whether it's negative or positive.
Yeah. There's even local companies like S2 Supplement Superstore that has in-bodies that you can go in and get scanned. So that's another way that you can hold yourself accountable is that way. You can go in every other week, I believe. But I know definitely once a month, they're not going to kick you out the building. I can tell you that, but you can go in and just get a body composition scan. And I will say this with a grain, like you got to take it all with a grain of salt, no matter which body composition that you use, whether it's skin fold, whether it's hydrostatic, whether it's in-body, any one of them, there's always variables. So if you're doing an in-body on that and then your skeletal mass is up and body fat is down, and then it's flipped the next time, then the first thing I always tell people is look at that water and what does their intercellular water look like? Because if they were kind of dehydrated one time and hydrated the next time, that's going to make a change in the number alone.
I know. I tell we have to fight all the time with people getting on the scale. Like women can hold up to 7 to 10 pounds of water weight because of hormones. So it's like, or with travel, or if you didn't hydrate the day before, like
Constipated.
if you're overthinking it, it's not going to work.
Right. And then mindset conditioning, I think that comes into doing just daily work. And a lot of this comes, like I said, there's so much free stuff out there that is beneficial. Before I started doing my walk and talks, I would always walk and listen to YouTube videos, like motivational YouTube videos is usually Tony Robbins based, but that's where I would kind of get my conditioning on my mindset. It's funny, we were watching Tony Robbins 5 to 7 years ago and doing it, and then we started doing his coaching, and now we're priming, we're doing a lot of those things, but that's all mindset conditioning to prepare us for the day, or even kind of like sometimes before we come in and do these, we'll prime and just change our mindset, get up and move.
Yeah.
Or even at the end of the day or in a stressful moment, you got to pivot and move, and that's all comes down to condition your mind to handle the struggles that will not go away through the rest of your life. So whatever that is, your excuse has been, it's going to be there. Just like they tell us in business, your $10,000 problems become $100,000 problems. Your $100,000 becomes $500,000. They're still the same problems, just at a bigger level. So just because you start some fitness wellness journey, or even going back to saving money, trying to figure out a savings plan to save money for the future, life is still going to continue happening. You're still going to have problems. But if your mindset isn't conditioned to handle those problems, is where you typically going to fall off the wagon, and it's harder to get back on.
Well, and that's the thing. The mindset's everything, because if you are somebody that emotionally eats, there's been times where I would eat and I didn't even realize what I was eating, or slowing down to enjoy it if it is something that's more of a cheat meal. But yeah, it's very true.
And then, the other side I kind of missed over with accountability, checking the box each day, but, make sure you write down your wins for the day. I've caught you lately, you've seen me kind of struggle, but you get me out of my own way by asking me, what were your wins today? And so I start going through them. By the time I get done with 3 or 4 or 5 wins, my my whole mood has already changed. So that's always a big side on that stuff. So that is kind of what I think is the actual items when it comes to a kind of bulletproof plan, is you really have to look at finding the real why. Again, don't go surface level on why you're doing this or why you need to do this. Get in really deep and get to the emotional triggers. And then you got to come up with game plans and actionable items to get through those triggers. And yes, there will be times, and even with me and you, in certain things, we still act in a way that we used to, but it's so short lived now.
Yeah.
Instead of being a day or two, it might be 10 minutes.
Right.
Is because we've done the work. So over consistency, over time, and doing these things, you will build a bulletproof plan. Again, it's not going to be overnight, just like fat loss. It's not going to happen in a couple of days. It is actual items consistently, day in and day out, month in and month out, year in and year out. And that's how you build, to me, a bulletproof wellness plan.
Well, and then I would say don't like you talked about earlier, give yourself grace, because I know the one thing that I still struggle with is giving myself grace, like understanding that, you know, slip ups will happen. So then it's like, okay, take something from everything.
Right.
So if you did have a setback, why did you have it? And what can you do to try to not have it again?
Right.
Or what can you do to pivot? Like we've had to recently adjust our schedules.
Right.
That derailed us, and it's seems so small, but it's like we're so habitual,
Right.
so it's like those things and realizing, okay, if you didn't do as much as you wanted to today, or if you didn't hit the mark, then just make it up.
Right. And I guess there's one thing that comes to mind too that I would add to that. Make sure that you find a team that's in alignment with your goals.
Yeah.
Make sure that you have a healthcare practitioner that's in alignment with where you want to be. That's going to pull the right labs, get you on the right things, explain things, that just doesn't want to fix things with medications, that actually wants to get to the root cause. Find a dietitian that isn't doing a diet that's based on what they feel is what's best, what work for them. And they just think it's going to work for everybody. Same thing with a trainer. Don't find a trainer that just only I've said it before, trains one dimensional. They only train this way. Well, that doesn't work for everybody because the human body is always the variable. So make sure that you're finding your team of trainers, dietitians, and medical team that's in alignment with your goals and that is open-minded enough to know how to pivot and move with you based on whatever criteria comes up.
I love it.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
hopefully this will help people go into the holidays with a little bit more of some guidance and, let them enjoy it a little bit more without feeling like it's a burden.
Right. It's not a burden. It's just do the work up front. This is what I tell my clients when we know the holidays are coming up. It's just like preparing for a vacation with your money. A majority of people don't have the financial means just to go on a trip whenever they want, right? They usually save up for it. So put your body in a good place to handle the stress for the holidays, improve your gut health, optimize your hormones, get in the habits that are, already there of like cardio, working out, and improving your sleep. Get those habits in order first, clean house, and then it won't be such a burden on your body or on you when it comes to the holidays. And then, of course, when the first of the year comes up, it's not like starting from scratch.
No. Well, thank you very much. I like those tips.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's another episode of Younger by the Minute. I'm Jamie Speiser, and I'm out.
I'm Jennifer Speiser, and thank you.